Hi, everyone. Very good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to this virtual panel discussion here today. And we'll be talking today about dynamic workflow in hiring and how it can help your hybrid workplace hiring efforts. So, I'm Jerry, and it's a pleasure for me to welcome all of you here today. So, a little bit about this topic that we're going to talk today. Companies have had a roller coaster ride in the last 18 months, right? And we've seen that their talent needs have also changed drastically. And during this time, recruitment and hiring has been at the forefront of this change, dialing up and dialing down according to business needs, right? So right now there are a large pool of qualified candidates, but there's a need for quick and efficient hiring workflows. And there's also need for us to minimize the time to find the right candidate, right? So, and that's the context that we wanted to speak about today. And we wanted to talk specifically about the dynamic workflow in hiring. And by that, really, we are trying to talk about how you're customizing the hiring process, how you're designing your hiring teams, how you're engaging in activity mapping, what kind of third party integration are you engaging in for task allotment, and how are you sort of accelerating the success of your hiring team on the whole. Before I invite and introduce our panelists here today, I want to thank our partner Zimeo for really being at the forefront of this conversation and for supporting us with the agenda here today as well, and for bringing the community to this topic as we reimagine the future of workforce. So, without further ado, I'm going to invite our first panelist to join us on screen. Ajay Kadian, who is the co-founder at Zimeo. He's passionate about product and engineering, and he's been with Zimeo. And he and his team have helped organizations to make their workplace better. And they've also helped organizations attract and retain talent. So our next guest is Rishu Garg, who is the CHRO at Rivigo, and Rishu has over 15 years of experience, and she's passionate about elevating everyday experience of employees and customers. She has a background in as an MBA and a finance graduate, with a background in driving strategy and processes across geographies. She has a proven track record in leading HR technology, compensation, performance, talent engagement, and leadership. We also have with us Renu Bora, who is the CHRO of TB Shankar. Thank you so much, Renu, for joining us. And she's a seasoned HR professional with over 25 years of experience in HR strategy, learning and development, talent management, OD, employee communication, and talent acquisition. Renu has again been recognized by multiple platforms and forums as an HR leader, and it's a pleasure to have all of you with us here today. So, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jerry.
All right. So before we start, I do want to announce to our audience that we have a Q&A session towards the end of this conversation. So it would be great to hear your thoughts, your concerns, your challenges that you have been navigating. And you can enter your questions at any time using the chat feature that's at the right-hand side of your screen. And you can post as many questions, and we will take as many questions as time allows. Yeah. Okay, so that brings us to our first question to our panel. What are some of the top hiring priorities that you're thinking about? In response to some temporary and maybe it's also permanent workplace changes that you're seeing. Rishu, can we start with you?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jerry, and welcome everyone. So when I remember when Diksha had contacted me for this session, I sticking to the theme of the session, dynamic workflows in hiring. Actually got me thinking really deeply about how this entire VUCA times have changed the entire way we look at hiring. So going from the traditional sequential way of you're doing hiring. We start off with sourcing and screening, and then going on to interviews and selection panel, and then finally to onboarding the candidate. So in these times, especially in these times of the hybrid workforce, there are a lot of people who are working from home. There are a lot of people who are working from the workplace. So and that's true for both the recruit, or in fact all three stakeholders: the recruiters, the panelists, and the candidate. So I think the first thought that came to our mind was, how do we ensure that our selection process is able to get the right candidate for the right role, and we are able to do it in the least time possible, and always ensuring that this process itself is as short as possible. So how do we ensure that we meet, let's say, the three right candidates for the role, as compared to evaluating 30 people for a certain role. And there's also this element of, now that the workforce is so spread out, how do we ensure that decisions are made quickly, and hiring is not a reactive support but is a proactive support. And in that sense, Jerry, I would like to say that technology has been a great friend. And, whatever we used to do as conversations with key stakeholders, now, technology helps us to kind of shorten the cycle and ensure that we are all on the same page. So, to give you an example, earlier, we had two different forms. One was the requisition form, and one was, let's say, a completely different process for resignation approval, right? So wherever there is a backfill position today, we've combined that, those questions as a part of the approval process, right? So from the manager approving a resignation to immediately raising a request that, yes, I would want to backfill this position, and these are the top three requirements for the role. So the HRBP and recruitment and the offboarding and onboarding teams are just way better connected and way better glued into the organization changes that are happening. So in that sense, I think this has just made us more agile, and we are able to adapt much more quickly, with the changes that we foresee or are happening.
Fantastic. So I think it's really a break from the past. It seems like a break from that sequential way of doing things and shortening your acquisitions, shortening your hiring cycle. So that's wonderful to hear. Renu, would you like to add to this?
Yeah, thanks first of all, the forum, and you for inviting. To the question that what are the hiring priorities in the new scenario, the pandemic is still on and the workplace is changing. I won't even call the workplace as a hybrid. I will call it fluid, because work from anywhere, work from home, uh, roster working. So it's so fluid, a workplace, because companies are allowing employees to work on the highly flexible time, which means if women would like to maybe spend 9 to 12 with their children or with their family priorities, there are women employees who are being allowed in many organizations to work maybe at 6 a.m. onwards or whatever. So in this fluid structure, what are the hiring priorities? How has the hiring priorities changed? So the one big trend that I'm seeing is that, you know there was a scenario where we had a strong budget focus, headcount focus, and we were working on those directions. Today, because business priorities are changing at such a fast speed, that suddenly you will get a hiring mandate out of the blue, because maybe a new some business opportunities are coming for this particular role around this area, and you need to um, deploy some talent there. That is one thing I'm finding, that suddenly out of things are changing, and even the job description is undergoing a lot of change. Uh, that is one which obviously enhances or maybe pushes you for new hiring challenge. And one thing also I'm finding as a trend is that in many uh, business leaders, they would like to build a role around a talent. So if you find a talent who has got multiple skills, very specialized skills, you don't want to lose the talent. So you make your organization structure around that talent, give the talent maybe 2 or 3 additional roles and responsibility, and then you make a structure around this. Is it a good scenario, is it a bad scenario? I'm not commenting on that. This is one. And as in the last 1.5 years, when the workplace itself has changed, you may have a fancy workplace, you may have something. When the workplace has changed, and for those who have joined in the last 2 years, how do they come to know the organization culture? Because they are only seeing the CEO and the leadership maybe through some talks, which they are forming their own opinion, because every communication has got something intended, something unintended. So the EVP, I think, has to be aligned. And our organization aligning their EVP fast, and or is a EVP which is like no is it workplace proof? I don't agree to that. So this also enhances uh, this also impacts hiring scenario, because as a recruiter, what do I now offer to the candidate, which is which is more fancier, which is more attractive, and which is what the candidate may be looking for. Because uh, I'm sure with the workplace changing, EVP also has undergone some changes. So the priorities are obviously to attract the right talent. Attract the right talent is one, and do the hiring, you know, as on yesterday. So hiring speed, I think there's a lot of push on hiring speed, which was not there earlier. And also, there is a focus on internal talent. Each organization has its own mandate. So as a recruiter, how do I balance the internal talent with the external talent? Who is good? Like, how do I choose, how do I select, how do I close, and how do I close on the candidate's expectation? So to And also one priority which I'm finding is that assessments, the way they were being done earlier, the psychometric assessments, and the way they were being done, the way they were administered has also now undergone change. And how do you see their results, and is it relevant? So these are some of the things which is changing or impacting hiring overall scenario in a macro way. I
That's
hope I
great.
have made
That's
some
great to
sense.
hear. Yes, I think we've spoken about a lot of things there. I think right from the fluid structure to how it's sort of enforcing flexibility and diversity, building jobs around talent, right? And also the challenges that we're seeing with company culture. How do you sort of enhance that EVP when everything is done remotely, right? So that's a great overview. I think both of you emphasized on this nature of drastic change, which is also very central to this time right now. So my next question is to Ajay. Now that we have this context, right? How have you been sort of helping companies rethink the hiring process in this? And how are you bringing changes to their hiring workflow?
Thank you, Jerry. So when we talk about hiring, Renu mentioned very good point over there is, you know, now time to fill. Earlier people are not much focusing on that part, but this is the key metrics as on date. Okay, now we have to think about every organization have different business needs. When they have different business needs, different positions have different kind of workflows or the interview processes. You earlier when we were working from offices, the interview process, physical interview processes are most of the time it is depending upon talking about assessments, talking about number of level of interviews. These are the fixed kind of stuff. But now when we're talking about hiring, the most crucial part is the assessment. Okay, pre-screening part is the most crucial part, and this is the this pandemic. push companies and the recruiters to think about the automation. Now, if we talk about a engineering manager, the kind of interview process that engineering manager required may be different for an executing profile. Okay. Now, when we talk about Zimeo, what Zimeo is doing and how Zimeo is helping, you can build different kind of workflows as per your business needs. You can map data into that, and with the time, you can improvise your things. As per a study, time to fill, in general, time to fill for a position is 36 days. Now, think about it. In this pandemic times, when rejection rate is much higher, it is almost increased by 50%. This is very crucial part organizations have to focus on, and this makes recruiters jobs more difficult in these particular times. Now, interviews, we have a assessment platform over there. In technology point of view, we have a virtual interview conversations, the walkthroughs, and the most difficult part, the cultural part. Okay, how you will take care of that when everybody is working from home or working from anywhere, because working from anywhere is the new term companies are generally using. But we have to think about why earlier companies, if I will give you an example of army. Okay, an army major or army colonel, why they don't write down an email for the instructions, why they emphasize going on the fields. The main reason is leaderships, you have to drive certain things from the front, and the way the leadership or the management drives that have the direct impact, okay, on the field workers. The same way, this is the one of the challenge on at the moment, cultural part. But with the new technology comes into the picture, we have the better communication, the collaboration is much easier, and the time to fill are reducing that.
That's great. I think, Ajay, the important point that you highlighted is that these workflows look very different, of course, for different companies based on the priorities that they have and the needs that they have and the focus areas that they have, and also the important role that the leadership and management directly plays. That's great. So, okay, so Rishi, do you want to add to this? How are youth rethinking from your own business context? I think from your industry and your company context, how are you rethinking the workflow?
I think picking up from what Ajay mentioned, it is actually different for each role, right? So I'm in the logistics space. Revigo is in the logistics space. A large part of our workforce, almost 80% of our workforce, needs to work on site every day, right? So the hiring process is very different for them, and the hiring process for our engineering team who can actually work from anywhere is very, very different. So I think the pandemic has just and these times have just made the entire process much sharper, in the sense that people who need to work on site today are people who are at a large number localites. Earlier there was a huge population who was comfortable with working really far away from the home. And right now, when we hire a lot of on-site people, because there is this uncertainty of do we have another lockdown, would we have to go back home again, we have a conscious balance of people who are both localites and workforce which has migrated from their hometowns. For the 20% of the workforce which can work from anywhere, there I think now we're open to actually hiring from anywhere, right? So the entire talent pool has increased tremendously for us. While we're headquartered in Gurgaon, we are open to somebody working from Chennai, working from Bombay, working from Guwahati, anywhere, right? So the only thing I think, another thing that the only thing that we try and do in the process is, early in this entire period, we sat down together and said that how do we ensure that everyone experiences Revigo, and no matter how much better we become in our interactions virtually. Nothing can beat face to face interaction. So how do we make every person who joins us experience the culture, experience the energy, and understand what they're doing. So what we did was, we in the entire workflow, we trained a few people who we call as bar raisers. They are expert interviewers who understand the role, who understand the organization, have spent some time here, and who would be great to check on principles and values that we stand for, and would therefore check on the cultural fit of the person. Now these bar raisers are spread across the country. So even if somebody is joining in an engineering team but is based out of Bangalore, and we the head of engineering team is based out of Gurgaon, we would get somebody from Bangalore to meet the person face to face, right? So so that they experience, and they have a buddy in the city and they don't feel too far from us, right? So in that sense, we've just tried very hard to ensure that both the physical experience and the virtual experience helps them understand our culture better. So the onboardings which used to happen at key places earlier now happen across the country. There also we've created a setup to ensure that whether somebody is joining in Bangalore or in Chennai or in Guwahati, go through the same experience. So there are specific people who are trained on onboarding in each of these places, and they are not HR. None of these people are from the HR team. And as Renu mentioned, there continues to be a huge focus on being nimble and manage manpower planning well. So we have these champions, learning champions who are present everywhere, who could be from operations, who could be from sales, yeah, who could be from any function, who help us do this. And I think in that sense, it's just our hiring has just become sharper. Another thing that we've done is we really sat down and thought through that, instead of having, let's say, 5 to 7 round of interviews, let's understand what is it that we check for in every round. And we've shortened the cycle by codifying certain processes. So for certain roles, we would definitely send out a case study in advance. For certain roles, there are written assessments. So that ensures that the cycle shortens, and we have the right candidate going into the interviewing stage. So a mix of technology and with a lot of help from all the stakeholders has really helped us in ensuring that our candidate experience remains great, and the onboarding experience remains good.
Fantastic. I think that's great to hear that you're sort of almost personalizing the whole workflow and process for one person almost, right? So, and as you said, it's different for each role, and you need to have a focus on the experience, and that's why you're sort of balancing the tech and the human element as well to that. So that's great how we have to sort of innovate in these times. So, Renu, how are you thinking about this challenge, and how are you sort of working your way through this? Renu, you're on mute.
Sorry. So you're talking about how we are rethinking the hiring process. I think it's an ongoing journey. We have not reached the final stage, and I don't think that our application software, our ATS, is in touch or is in track with what we would like to have it at this moment. At the same time, the ATS provider also, they're also bringing new offerings and new options available to us. So if I see this question about where do we need to tweak the hiring process, I think in the case of leadership hiring, because we did a very important, we closed a critical leadership position in the last 6 months, and there I found that we wanted a certain BU leader to be like this, and we formed a panel. The interview panel was reconstituted, offline, with somebody who has certain experience in sales, somebody who has certain experience in P&L, and so on. And I wish that we had this dynamic workflow in the system where we can reconstitute, and we can just look into the assessment panel, or a customized hiring team for that matter. So that is one need that I'm seeing. We also have in our organization, we have a sizable number of people who are workers, who are obviously who can't work from home, who have to be in that location, and we would like to have them obviously from the local population or staying in that nearby location for ease of commutation. So these workers, again, maybe 2 years back or 3 years back, we were thinking that we just want two hands. These are like picker packer job and nothing else. But we have seen what has happened in Europe and other countries where you had a truck driver who moved up to become the transportation head, and there are many stories like this. And so why can't we have it in India? It is not that if I am today high school pass and I join a logistic industry, a picker packer, it doesn't mean that I can add more certification and rise up. And this is called hiring for the future. So are we thinking for certain hiring that let's go for 30% of the hiring in worker category should be hiring for future, or we're just saying no, this is a segment who would become a dead end after 3 or 4 years, because once a picker packer, always a picker packer. So I think this is a change in our mindset that we would like our business people to also understand. And this is a big change that I would like to have it in the organization, or in the industry rather. Uh, and and we have a segment in the organization which is a tech BU. Now it's a totally work from home environment, or you can say work from anywhere. So there, what has happened in the last 1.5 years is that while we are only hiring initially candidates who were Delhi based, but we knew that the talent is sitting somewhere in Indore or in Varanasi or maybe in Hyderabad, but we were forcing them to relocate, and we were spending a lot on relocation cost. But now we agree, and we have happily agreed that they will continue to be in Bangalore or in Hyderabad or in Indore, and we are quite okay with this. So this has suddenly opened a big door for the recruiter uh, for sourcing. Not that the hiring is easy. Here in this particular segment, we have got a lot of no-shows happening. In the tech, I think tech hiring has become very difficult in the last 1 year. There are candidates who would, negotiate with you and then negotiate back with the organization for the retention and so on. But that's a different story. We are, talking about that as a challenge here. Uh, and for the segment of our workforce who can work from home, I think the most important hiring priorities has changed in the last few years. Is that last few months is that we want a hiring to be very fast, and we also want them to have more, I would say, soft skills. This is what I now it is not loud and clear, but I have found that maybe to be successful in work from home scenario, you need to have far more softer skills in addition to what you have those as your core skills. Yeah. So assessment becomes an important thing, as Ajay was talking about.
Right, right. Absolutely. I think it's like you said, I think the first point that you spoke about, the continuous journey, the nature of this is constantly changing. And we also need to be able to adapt to a mindset shift to make the most of this. Great. So, Ajay, I want to speak to you a little bit about the challenges that you're seeing companies face. And when you look at the future, and what are some of the challenges that you foresee that we would need to adapt to from a technology standpoint?
So, Jerry, the biggest challenge now, companies are looking out for multiple skills from one candidate. Okay. So, purpose career candidates are tougher to find. Okay. So, in hiring, we have more than 1,600 sources where we can put down our job and over there. Now we have to think about as a hiring manager, how or the talent acquisition manager, how difficult it is to populate so many, to map so many sources and put down the job descriptions or the job vacancies over there. The second biggest challenge in this particular time, specifically as it mentioned, is the dropout rate or the acceptance rate. 50% candidates drop out. It doesn't matter how much increment or the how much hike you will give them, but the at the moment we are on the top of the rejection rates. Okay, these are the two challenges at the moment. Now, how technology can improvise this, or how technology can help in this part is the biggest part on this particular things come out the candidate experience part, and candidate experience start from the when you posted a job. So when you posted a job, how personalized you can make it. Okay, depending upon job, how you can make it, how a candidate can access or know about your company better, how you can drive the values, the culture through without the physical conversations, how smooth you can build the onboarding processes, how smooth after not only the onboarding, but after the when once a candidate become your employee, how can you streamline the processes, and how that candidate or the employee you can correlate that employee can correlate with their company's values and mission. These are the things where technology can play a significant role. Uh, when we talk about the sources part and integrated system, which can also include your background verification, which can include your assessments, which can include your virtual interview panel discussions. This can save a lot of time. Okay, and now when we talk about uh, cost is one of the major factors, and when everything is integrated you can reduce the cost. And in future companies have to think about it. Most of the companies are already working on this particular part, and Zimio specifically, as I mentioned, there are ATS providers are improvising with your current needs. Zimio is providing the customized workflow, the personalized experience. Zimio is reducing the life cycle. Zimio is making better interactions or the better communication, automated by automatic reminders, by automatic calendar invites, by automatic virtual or the Zoom walkthroughs. So Zimio is helping by this way.
That's great. I think that's great to hear the enabling role of technology, right? I think it's just easing the process for all stakeholders involved. So that's fantastic. So, Rishu and Reno, I think both of you already have highlighted some challenge areas, some opportunity areas already. But Rishu, is there something else that you would like to add from a future standpoint that you see as an emerging challenge?
I think the yeah, I think if I were to think about what is my current challenge and emerging challenge, I think Renu briefly mentioned about the effort that that all of us are today spending on hiring,
Yeah.
and the entire period between selecting the right candidate and the candidate joining. That entire period of creating a great candidate experience, creating, ensuring that they're going they understand the company culture and they understand the role, they're excited to join, I think is really, really key. So, that is one space that we are consciously working on to ensure, every time there is an offer drop, there is a deep dive discussion that we have with the entire team, and we take a lot of feedback from the candidate on what could we have done better, right? So we are trying to learn from these opportunities, or we kind of trying to ensure that we learn from this feedback to ensure that the entire experience is very, very seamless, right
Yeah.
from us posting the job to candidate applying to the interview process. How do we ensure that they are engaged and looking forward to coming and work with us. So that is, that's a space that we want to definitely solve for, especially in the areas where there is hiring, right? So especially in areas where where we are hiring quite a few people at once, and managers or champions may not have the bandwidth to engage with everyone in a personalized fashion. So how do we ensure that we have a connected candidate experience even there? So that's a space that we are working on, and that is something that we would want to definitely make much better.
Fantastic. That's great. So I'm conscious of time. We've got a few questions as well. But there are some areas that we also want to touch on is the role of the recruiter. And I would also ask Ajay to speak a little bit about the dynamic worker hiring again in the context of today. But Renu, if you could touch on how the role of the recruiter has changed, right? And how do you see it evolving? Is it becoming just more attached to the technology role, or how is it evolving?
I think the role of recruiter has become far, far more challenging than ever before, from various angles. And if I speak about it, then I may sound a bit, everywhere. But yes, I would say is the recruiter close to the hiring manager in the sense that I know of hiring manager or my leadership who ask for a very different kind of talent. So they would say that they would look for very competency based hiring. They would say, no, it is not that somebody who has always been in logistics, I'm looking for that candidate. You bring me from some hospitality industry because maybe I need to focus more on customer service. There are I know of an engineering company who were looking for a head, uh, and they were quite open. They ultimately hired from hospitality in industry because they wanted to focus on customer service in engineering organization. Similarly, in my company also, I've seen when I speak to the leaders in the organization, they say we want this kind of competency. And then when we go down to the recruiter just sees those keywords um, as those loaded statement of experience in logistics, in sales, in these accounts or whatever. So how do you translate those competencies into meaningful terms? That is one challenge for the recruiters. Second is that the challenge of the plenty, because now you have social recruiting, you have got resumes coming from everywhere. You post one position on LinkedIn, you will have at least 800 resumes coming in a span of 7 days. you know how do you, even if you have the best algorithm, is it the right algorithm? Is it able to catch diverse, and is it inclusive? Because uh, I know of people who are highly talented, they are looking for jobs. I've got some friends, and if I am owning an organization, I would have hired them. But uh, but obviously the CV doesn't speak that way, and there are people who have two or three offers in their hand. So how do you, as a recruiter, how do you reach to the right talent? uh, but then you have to also do it within 2 days or 3 days, because you have to just find good 5 CVs and present it to the hiring manager. So can you do a good diverse search? Can you do a good inclusive search? Can you handle a search where you can tick mark all your priorities, like you want to do a diversity hiring, you want to do a hiring for PWD and all those things? Are you able to do it? So these are the challenges I think the recruiter has. At the same time, I think uh, when we were working from office, uh, and I will not use the word normal because I think there's no normal, and this working is maybe new normal. But in those days, a recruiter had this opportunity to talk to the hiring team, the hiring manager, collaborate with the hiring manager, and tap the hiring manager's resources also to get a good fit. Now, the recruiter is working in a space where there are lot many resumes from LinkedIn, lot many resumes from direct applicants. So, selection of those resumes, the first shortlisting or the first long listing rather, has become a big challenge for the recruiter. The opportunity, I would say that I think there's a big time opportunity for tech now to come in and help the recruiter. So That way, I think uh, it's a mixed bag. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Rishu, how are you seeing the role of the recruiter change? I think we've seen this context of technology and overpowering sort of response right now from the hiring market as well. How are you seeing this role change?
So I think from 15 years back to today, if I was to see how the role has changed, it's become much more complicated. It is no more about coordination for interviews or pushing resumes, etc. Right? It is the identifying the right talent and is the talent the right fit for the role. With a lot of data and options being available. So there is a lot of focus now that goes into understanding what is the right metric and ensuring that you understand this metric role wise. For example, I need to know for which role social media really works. For which role do I need to connect to maybe a local employment exchange? For which role would I want to hire through a job portal? So do I have this metric, and do I ensure that therefore I'm sourcing it correctly, right? Which are the and I believe you me, we study this. We study this to understand which are the campuses when we are hiring from campus, or which are the organizations when we are hiring, when we have talent from a particular organization, you know which what set is really working for us. A lot of our entry level hiring, most of our bulk hiring happens in operations and in sales, happens through campuses. And we over the last 2 years, we've really studied this data, and now we understand why is it that from a certain campus people stick, and they understand and are able to do this role better. And this feedback is something that we are able to even channelize to campuses that we want to work with, that why don't you start this course, and why don't you introduce this in your curriculum. And this is what we find is really working well for the hires we've had. So understanding the metric has become very, very important. So there's a lot of data available, but I want my recruiters to study that data and make strategic decisions on from where will hiring be. And again, who is it that a lot of times we definitely reach out to candidates who are not actively looking, because they fall in my top three. This is the ideal candidate to hire, right? So we have these set of people who've been in the organization for really long, and we kind of ensure that they are a part of the panel to excite the candidate. The candidate will come in saying that I am not really actively looking, but this is what I really want to do. These are my goals. So how do we carve out a job for them, and what do we add to the job description so that the personal goal and the organization goals meet. So I think that is another that's why I talked about the complexity and the strategy. We're not only hiring for today, but I'm also hiring for 1 year from now, right?
Yeah,
And that's how the candidate sees it. I'm not joining the organization just for the role today, but what is it gonna add to the entire journey in my career. So I think that is something that recruiters today really invest time in. And they kind of therefore are able to, earlier I think there was a lot of focus on salary negotiation. I think now there's a lot of focus on profile negotiation. Okay, do we add this to your role? Would you be excited to do this? And this is something that I find even in candidates, right? So pay is not the first and last option for making a choice for a role. The role has to be really exciting. So that's something that I've seen that recruiters are able to really do very, very well today. And they actually treat candidates exactly like how our sales team would treat our most the high value customers. right? And yeah, I think that's something that I would have not noticed in recruiters 15 years back. So
Yeah.
that's something that has changed.
Yeah, I think the last point you made about the shift, to almost like a sales kind of setup, I think is it captures the essence of all of the points that you made. I think right from how you're going back to colleges with some feedback, with data and insight. That's just very fascinating. I think it's also become very interesting and a lot more mindful of this role. So that's great to hear. So, Ajay, I want to leave one last question before we go to the audience questions. We've spoken a bit about candidate experience and how it's sort of very central to the outcome that we want to see, right? I think Irishu has also highlighted this. Where do you see this workflow shifts and technology enablement uh, impact this, and what kind of opportunity areas is it opening for HR professionals in the future?
Okay. So, Jerry, one of the thing is technology comes into the place when you need automation, when you need to save money, to save time. Okay, and the this particular time, the need is because recruiters have most of the data available, but they don't know most of the time how they can utilize that data, what to do with that data. As Rishu mentioned, now the focus is on which source or which channel is working for which kind of job. Okay, not only about which kind of job, but sometimes some channels are also not working for some different locations as well. Maybe your one third party is one of the good channel for Delhi location for engineering manager, but the same way that source will not work for the Bangalore or the Chennai location. So we have to think about, and data can help you with those kind of stuff, and technology comes into that place. Now, when we talk about the opportunities, the biggest opportunity for technology is to give smoother experience not only to the candidate but to the internal employees as well, to fasten the process, to make the better collaboration and communication, and to reduce the time of a closer. These are the main areas where technology can play a role. We can talk about each and every point in detail, but these are the key matrices, or these are the key opportunities technology can play over there.
Right. Fantastic. So let's go to the audience questions. I want to start from the last here. So we have a question for Rishu, and one of our audience members wants to know, how do you make the process more empathetic for candidates who have potential but have a job gap? I think this has a diversity element maybe to it. So can how are you thinking about this, Rishu, and what would you suggest?
So at Trivigo, we are a young organization. We are about 7 years old, and we are in that sense completely open. I don't think we've ever worried about job gaps or which campus one comes from, or what is the background that you bring in. So I think in terms of let me handle this question in two different ways. So one is that all of us know, and this is a deep part of our culture, that only when every person succeeds in their job can we succeed, right? So there is a deep emphasis on what would help this person succeed. So during every step in the selection process, there is a discussion. We call it hiring discussions that happens on what will this person bring to the table, and what are the possible risks that we see, and do we have a framework to ensure that these risks are taken care of. Just yesterday we hired somebody in our customer experience team, and this person had taken a break for 2 years. They had decided to ship to Australia, but that didn't work out, and they came back. But in the entire selection process, we felt that The experience and the skills that the candidate brought to the table was was as good as the other candidates who were selected for the role. So there were more than one positions that we were filling. But we also knew that there is the only thing that happens in a job gap is a little loss of confidence. So we also knew that somebody has not been working at a workplace for some time, and this is going to be a different situation for them. So, whenever we are designing the onboarding process, we try and ensure it's personalized. And, who is the buddy who's selected? How will the first week look like? How will the first 30 days look like? And, if that is something that helps the person get a lot of confidence. I feel that this is more of a non-issue these days. I think, especially in the new age organizations and the startup world, I don't think it's something that is a big issue. So we just support the candidate with, as I said, training or discussions with the buddy so that they are quickly up to speed with the work environment.
Great. I think that's some fantastic advice.
And just add
Just a
one thing
question.
here.
Yeah, go on,
We
Reena.
should give a very fantastic advice, very relevant. I just add one thing here. I think by making the job description free from experience-based, terms. There are ladies who speak 25 years, 20 years. No, I think we should just go for the lower end of that number of years. If number of years play some important role, by making the job description sound more competency-based than on experience-based is one thing. And then by building a culture in the organization where people don't just move because they have put certain number of years. So suppose I've lost my 5 years because I took a maternity break, or I had just lost my job, my company closed down, whatever. Now I've entered maybe at a frontline level. But if I'm assured in the organization that if I do well, then I will move fast track, and then I think then it gives a more authentic, like you need to have some success stories in the organization around this. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. In fact, there was a question on job descriptions itself, I think, for Reno. Do you want to speak a little bit about that job descriptions part? You
I
spoke
think it's
about it in this context, yeah,
yeah.
for
I also
diversity,
wrote
but
that
how is it changing? Yeah,
yeah. So I'm just saying that job descriptions are changing because in the last 1.5 years, at least in my organization, I've seen that the customer landscape also has changed. Maybe because of the shift happening in the industry and mega shifts happening. The focus on automotive versus the focus on pharmaceuticals and so on. So now you are looking for a salesperson who has got more competency, maybe to handle a pharmaceutical customer, or some maybe solar customers. So job description are not like cast in stone, and they are changing a lot. And as I said that since hiring are also impacted by we are building a structure also around the talent. As I said somewhere, that we would like to retain some talent, internal talent in the organization, and then we say that okay, for this talent, let's build a team around this. Let's try to tweak our mm, organization structure. Let this person also handle two more things, and so obviously it impacts the job description of other roles. Is
right,
it
right.
happening is it happening constantly? I'm not saying that, but yes, job
Okay.
descriptions are fluid. So, so every time when we make job description, we have to also get it validated from the hiring manager. So I know if I am under ISO, audit, I'll be asked 200 questions around this. But the fact is that every 6 months you have to have a relook at your job description because something or the other has changed in the organization.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, great. So, a question for Ajay: how can we humanize technology during the hybrid workplace hiring process? Are there any success stories that you would like to share on this?
So, Zimeo in itself is a success story in this part. Our 30% which we, hired is from last in this particular pandemic time, and completely on remote. Okay. So when we say personalized experience, so in our processes there is we minimize human intervention. Okay, there are so many touch points during the process, but human intervention is very less. Now when somebody is applying for a specific job, uh, depending upon the job, that candidate will receive some specific case studies, or the what are the expectations apart from the JD, what are the things as in company culture, what we are looking for, what we are not looking for. That will give it a sense of understanding is they are the right fit or not. After that, when first personal touch point comes into the picture, our HR recruiter touch base them, we clarify the complete, what are the things we are looking for, what are the steps we will they have to follow in the particular process, specific to the engineering hiring. When we talk about, so our first steps comes into the picture is the assessment part. Okay, our assessment depending upon the job, so there are multiple jobs in the engineering, so depending upon the job they will receive the automated system generated assessment test, personalized reminders depending upon the job. After that, when they completed that particular scenario, if they qualified, they will receive a congratulations mail through the system itself. And that mail also includes what are the next step. Okay, then comes into the picture our recruiter again touch base them and give them complete understanding to what are the next process look likes, and how we will do that. Give them complete flexibility. They can opt for their interview scheduled. If somebody want to schedule their interview at 3, opt for it. If somebody want at 7, they can, depending upon the availability of the manager. Okay, because their calendar is directly integrated with the system. Okay, and when everything goes smooth at the last touch point, when we send the offer letter, candidate have the right to accept or reject. And after processing the actions, they will receive different kind of notification, different kind of communication. The same thing go on the onboarding part as well. Who should be the buddy into the system, what uh, what should be the next 15 days the agenda, what are the trainings, everything will be system generated. They will receive a personalized communication, not only the over the email, but we have our own engage module where team collaborations, they can collaborate with their buddy into the system, they can collaborate with their teams. And there are certain feedbacks, or the we float just to check the pulse of the candidate, so that we know if there is anything we can improve within the system. We can relook the data, and we will make our processes accordingly.
Absolutely. That's great. I think there's some great examples there as well. So we have about 2 to 3 minutes, but I want to make sure that we speak about also one question around sourcing. And I heard Rishu and Renu also speak about how they have access to talent from outside their office and from Chennai and different locations. Indoor, I heard Renu mention as well. So, how are you thinking about this, and how is your approach to identifying talent at different locations remotely very different, or is it just that you have this reach, so you're taking advantage of this? Renu,
I'll just add one line here. The question is that, what is the question, by the way? It's
what
how do
steps
you,
are you doing differently to access talent remotely from tier 3 or tier 2 places, or
yeah,
places
I
that are
think,
outside of your office?
yeah.
Yeah.
So even if the talent is sitting in your placement agency pool, even if the talent is sitting in your ATS database, I think the best way for the organization is through employer branding. If the organization in your social media, you are informing to people what are your plans, what are you moving, in which direction you are moving, because the talent sitting in tier 2, tier 3 city also would like to know where your organization is heading for. That is one. And it's very important to be authentic, but employer branding helps, because ultimately you have to attract talent. You cannot, I'm just saying, you can do a lot of wide search from the pool, but ultimately you have to speak to the candidate and convince or create that buy-in. And for that, you need to have a very strong presence, very strong employer branding, and not just brand, but what is in future. So the CEO's interviews about what is in store, what is happening next, how is the landscape for logistics changing, what is your organization doing, and so on helps. That is one. And second, obviously, uh, enriching your database with internal and external talent is there. In tier 2 and tier 3 cities, I think what we do is that we we go industry agnostic for for lower level of roles. Lower means junior profile. We don't go that you have to have from logistics industry, and this is where we have found some success in our critical sales hiring. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what on my side.
Great. We have a question on how do you keep candidates motivated to avoid absconding chances? This is a golden question, but any suggestions you have on this?
Rishu, we would like to try. In our case, we keep them warm. This
Okay.
is what we have always told to the hiring manager: keep the candidates warm till the time they join, and then the other team takes over. But you have to be in close touch with the candidate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rishu Ajay,
I think just just in the to ensure I don't take too much time. I think three things. One is understand deeply the candidate. What is it that they want, and what is the brand of organization and leadership they want to experience and join in, and ensure that they experience that. Second, most of our experience is very, very personalized to ensure that we understand them, they understand us, and we have a lot of experiences around the company culture throughout the pre-joining process. And last, again, just repeating the same thing that we actually treat them as very high value customers. So if I'm onboarding a customer, I would want to ensure that everything that they need is in place, and that their expectations are met from the outset. So having a very honest, authentic interaction, where expectations are well understood, is something that we try to do.
great, fantastic. Okay, so we have a lot more questions, but I would request, with the permission of our speakers, for these to be taken offline. So, since we're short of time. Okay, great. So, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for your engaging questions. Thanks to our esteemed speakers for taking time to share their insights and their journey, and also answer your questions. So, thank you so much for that. I'd also like to thank our partner Zimeo for helping us stitch this session together. You can post your feedback at any time in the survey link in the chat section. Your input matters. Thank you so much. And that concludes today's session. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone. Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, panelists and
Thank you.
organizers.
Bye bye.